What's going on, everybody? Eric Lindquist at Stochastic here on the Odd Chopper channel, coming to you with a Thursday edition of NBA Lindy's Leans, Likes, and Locks. Hit that like button, subscribe button, notification bell goes a long way for me on this video, goes a long way for you. That way you become a prize whenever great content is going live here at our little neck of the YouTube woods. And so far, so good here in the NBA streets. Chris Paul goes way over. A nice finish for him. Chris Paul there in that fourth quarter goes way over the 8.5 points at plus money. And then Jaylen Brown, even alongside Jason Tatum, we got some nice news. Drew Holiday gets ruled out. The assist rate goes up a little bit for Jaylen Brown in those circumstances. He goes way over 24.5 points plus assists. Felt really good about those reads. Now we get to the biggie. We need LeBron to come through for us, and then we'll have a smash of a Christmas holiday. And I'm recording here about 8 minutes before that game starts. Actually, exactly 8 minutes before that game starts. But we got Jordan Klein here, producer Jordan Klein, along for the ride. You can check out Lindy50 down at the link below if you want to get a head start. Check out that Discord. Come in, get all of my plays night before. Get all of my plays before I'm recording them here so you can get the best prices. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But without further ado, producer Jordan Klein, let's get to the picks. First off, hopefully you had a great holiday. Second off, Oklahoma City at Indy is a terrible game to bet on right now. I have no clue what to make of Tyrese Halliburton's resurgence because, I was told earlier in the year he couldn't shoot on the road. Oh, look at Tyrese Halliburton. He can't shoot on the road. And now all he does is shoot on the road, and everybody else feels very, very stupid for having given that analysis. Here's the thing. You didn't hear it from me because that is such substantial evidence, and positive regression towards the mean is a thing. Tyrese Halliburton, whether it was his shoulder that was hurting, whether or not he was just tired from last year, they end up playing into the Eastern Conference Finals, ends up being like an ancillary piece there on the bench, hanging out, living his life. Like, now he's supposed to be the guy here in Indy, a little bit different than the Olympic team, a little bit different than wherever else we've seen Tyrese Halliburton dinged up and, again, playing a lot more basketball than he's accustomed to over the summer. But 5.5, this is such a trappy line because I've got this closer to 7. But when you talk about a 1.5 point difference at 5.5, obviously some of those late end of game possessions can kind of go for you, against you. And Andy's got a bunch of really good free throw shooters at the center position, Miles Turner and Pascal Siakam. Not something I talk about a lot on these shows, but when you see certain things graded like around 5.5, 6, I do kind of make my tiebreaker, hey, should this be a play? Should this not be? Well, tiebreaker here for me is that Indy can make some of those free throws in tighter of game in end of situations. Also, at 5.5, we're expecting OKC to be the ones leading it towards the end of that charge. So it is what it is. I just have to stay away from this game entirely. I like OKC a lot. You know that by this point. Isaiah Hartenstein has been dynamic on this team. And when you get Chet Holmgren back, we're going to see some ridiculous stuff on the defensive end. But for the time being, OKC minus 5.5, I'm just going to be leaning that direction. We're not going to bet anything in this one unless a prop really, really shows up. Next up on the agenda, Miami at Orlando. 1.5 here going towards Orlando. And I'm apologizing because, I can't predict the future entirely. But even if you had bet Boston, which I thought was a great number to be getting at -9, closes closer to 10. They're up 15 at halftime. Jalen Suggs ends up ruled in, and Jason Tatum gets scratched right before the game starts. There's no way of knowing that other than me just trying to scour Twitter. And I do that all the time from a DFS perspective and from a betting perspective. I'm always concerned about who's in, who's out, but sometimes terrible shit happens in every sport. It's not just the NBA. It happens sometimes in MLB where you have live action on a team where a pitcher gets scratched and you go from having Chris Sale starting to having a gas can starting there for Atlanta. Stuff like that happens all the time in every sport. You have to live through the variance. So don't bet more than you can afford. Always utilize bankroll management, but I still feel bad whenever my locks get very, very bad breaks like that. Jason Tatum's the best player on the Celtics, and all of a sudden he's not playing basketball on Monday. What are we actually doing here, Boston? But they got their butts kicked on Wednesday to account for those sins, and we cashed some nice prize pick stuff over in the premium Discord because Yabu Sele, he got ripped off the board everywhere else after Joel Embiid sprains his ankle. You don't care about any of that. Let's talk Miami-Orlando, shall we? Orlando, very defensively forward, 209.5 total. That's kind of what they're doing here in the absence of Franz Wagner, waiting here also for Paolo Banchero to get back. Those two guys, their best two players being out. Jalen Suggs has really taken over this offense, but his props look pretty efficient. Almost everybody's props look efficient other than Haywood Highsmith. He's been starting. He's inside of -110 at -103 at Caesars, over 5.5 points. I'm really contemplating here, but I haven't bet it yet, and that's the only reason that it's not going to show up here with a like button in the corner. So, producer Jordan Klein, boop. Haywood Highsmith, minus 103 Caesars. I love how he puts in the book everybody. So eloquent. Over 5.5. He's starting a lot, playing a lot of minutes. Drew Smith now also out with that Achilles injury. He's going to be out for a while. Feel bad for him. He's just a grinder. Plus, my parents loved watching him for the Sioux Falls Skyforce. They said Drew Smith was awesome, so it's a bummer. Huge bummer. Let's get to some actual bets, shall we? Charlotte, minus 2.5, taking on Washington. And in this spot, you should know, 226.5 total. 226.5 total is too low. And here's a couple of the reasons why. First off, we're seeing all the pace and all the land coming in here on the Washington side because Washington just goes breakneck. Number 4 in terms of pace. They have the toughest defensive strength of schedule that they've faced as well. And now you get to face a Charlotte team, which, by the way, is not first in defensive strength of schedule. Far, far from it. Just saying, they haven't exactly faced much foe themselves. And Washington's going to bring the pace. And then Charlotte, even without Brandon Miller out there, I feel pretty good about this spot. I feel really good about this spot, in fact. And I think LaMelo Ball being out there should be able to push the pace. I think Bilal Coulibaly, whether he's in or out, is fine because Keyshawn George, Johnny Davis, both of those guys are adding a bunch of pace here to my metrics. I try to go player by player. Bub Carrington is also questionable in the injury report. Probably only matters if you get Coulibaly out because Poole, Brogdon, going to be playing a bulk of the minutes. But Brandon Miller, he's sitting there with that Q tag. I think he's closer into playing here after a prolonged absence with the ankle injury. Didn't sound like it was that serious. They've been precautionary because, I repeat, it's Charlotte. They don't care about winning, but they care about developing guys and they care about eventually winning at some point in time. That's usually what you're hoping from your NBA franchise. Is over 226.5. I like this a lot. I think this is a pretty good one. This is actually my third favorite play. I've got one that's a spread that I really, really like, and then one lock on the card for you later. Game number 4, taking on Atlanta and Chicago. That'll be a fun one. Atlanta hosting Chicago. We saw Trae Young come back into the fold, so I don't think there's really any issues about him being in, out. He's listed questionable for what it's worth with the right heel contusion, but I think he's far, far closer to playing than not. As for Josh Giddey, I don't know what to make of it. I will say Kobe White, just an absolute dud that he ended up putting out last time out. But I think no matter what, his assist rate, his points per game, everything's going to look much, much better in the box score with the absence of Josh Giddey. So have that on alert when it comes to props. And, well, there's one other guy that I think actually grades out really well, and it's not Jalen Johnson, where that number has gone from 22.5, where we bet him ad nauseum on points plus assists, up to 24.5. Kind of where it's sitting now, and with Trae Young there, we're just staying away. Chicago, Ayo Dosunmu. This guy walks into way more minutes in the absence of Josh Giddey. Actually, there's lots of times where he's more of an advantageous back, even with Josh Giddey in, because those numbers come down, and then he plays over Josh Giddey in crunch time. That's happened multiple times. Over half of the games that Chicago's played actually this entire season. So pay close attention to some of those things, but currently looking around like 30% assist rate, even alongside Kobe White and Zach LaVine here for Ayo Dosunmu with Josh Giddey off the floor. Yeah, I kind of prefer Josh Giddey off the floor in this circumstance, but haven't bet it yet purely because it's minus 120 at Bet365, which is currently the best book that I have available to me. Maybe in the morning, something else shows out better, but Ayo Dosunmu over 21.5 PRA, currently my best bet from this game. Weird to have it not be Jalen Johnson, but I repeat, those numbers have inflated. The vig is inflated, and at minus 120 here for Ayo, I'm just hoping we can get minus 110 or better, or I'll take 22.5 as long as it's at even money. Come on, books, give me what I want. And this is probably number 4 on the priority list. We have what? 1, 2, 3, 4 bets that I've made. One that's like, we could almost call it 4.5 because I do have a lean like to finish out the program, but Toronto at Memphis. And Memphis, shout out them for just finding new and effective ways to be awesome at basketball. I mean, Santi Aldama, one of the more underrated players coming off the bench in the NBA these days. You also have Scottie Pippen Jr. I think he's properly rated. I think most people like him. But at 20 and 10, they're number 2 in the West. Can't tell you enough how impressed I am by Memphis, and we should have all saw this coming. They lost everybody to injury, whether it was Brandon Clark, John Morant, Desmond Bane. They lost everybody to injury over the course of last season. Really developed some young players that now have some legs, and now Jalen Wells playing decently well on the defensive side of the ball here for Memphis, and that's really what they care about, riding down on the defensive end, and then offensively, Even off the bench, Luke Kennard, one of the better three-point shooters in the NBA. Really impressed by the construction of this team. Notice how I haven't talked about Toronto at all. Not impressed by it, but we'll say Emmanuel quickly being out. He's close to coming back. Jakob Poeltl, close to coming back. He's out for this game as well. And Bruce Brown, close to coming back, out for this game. I think the construction is about to get a lot better for them, but for this current iteration, Barnes, Barrett, Dick, Agbaji, and Mogbo, it's not going to be the easiest back of any kind of sorts, but I'm still going to do it because 12.5 is a gigantic number to be getting here. And yes, it's on the road in Memphis. Yes, I just got done singing the praises of the bench from Memphis and Zach Edey, whether he's starting or not, against a Toronto that's going to start Mogbo here at the center position. Doesn't matter. I have this at 10.5. And again, I think Memphis is the much better team between the two, but we play a numbers game. We play an expected win percentage game. And for me, I think Toronto covers this number a lot more than the 54% type number. So let it be known, big fan of Toronto backing it here in this spot. Also a big fan of you guys signing up here at the Premium Discord. We got everything 50% off from now until the end of time for your first month or first week. What does that mean? Well, if you want to get all of my plays sent to you directly to your phone the second that I place them, if you want to get all of my pick'em cards directly as soon as I place them, if you want to get everything that I have going over in the betting streets, in the pick'em streets, talking through DFS as well, Lindy DFS, we have a DFS channel set up for you to be able to discuss NFL cash games. That's primarily been what we've done here. NBA, we're going to be getting into the depths here as we get post NFL regular season. Looking forward to bringing you all of the goods there in that Lindy DFS channel as well. But Lindy 50 turns that first week into $10 or your first month into $25. That's less than $1 a day. And I know I say that a lot here on these programs, but that's what I wanted. That's what I envisioned for everybody to be able to afford to jump into it and have it be worth everybody's time there in that Premium Discord. Get my plays early, get them often, and get them at the best price. Lindy 50 down at the link below. Sign up for Tails today. Alrighty, y'all, 4 games to go. Let's get to the picks. We come off of that ad read into my favorite play of the day, Brooklyn. 9.5-point dogs taking on Milwaukee. And there's a ton of news here on the Milwaukee side. And we have to talk about a bunch of hypotheticals here in the midst of this lock. Ben Simmons, questionable. Dorian Finney-Smith, questionable. Damian Lillard on the Milwaukee side and Giannis Antetokounmpo, questionable. Those are 4 massive questionable tags in just about every single right. But I've played through the iterations of who's in, who's out, where you go 0 of 4, 2 of 4, 3 of 4, 1 of 4, obviously playing out every scenario. And I got to say, every single time, all 4 of those, with all 4 either in or out, I'm over 219. And that becomes a really interesting prospect here because Dennis Schroeder is now here with the Golden State Warriors. Hasn't been playing well for the Golden State Warriors, but he's with the Golden State Warriors. And you still got this Milwaukee team that, despite what we saw in the bubble against OKC and these weird NBA Cup circumstances, again, bubble, I don't know why I said that, but they're 16-12, been playing better basketball of late, 99.6 possessions per 48. That's dead middle of the NBA at 16th. I still feel confident that their defense is not all that good. Their adjusted defensive strength of schedule, plus 0.3, meaning that they're ninth. They faced a pretty decently difficult strength of schedule on the defensive end. If Ben Simmons ends up off the floor, this ends up becoming over 222. If Ben Simmons is on the floor, it becomes closer to 220. Why is he worth 2 points there? Well, Ben Simmons, despite the fact that he can generate assists and he can do really good things on the offensive end for other players, he's a good defender. And that becomes a very nice positive for Milwaukee to deal with him off the floor. Now let's move to the Milwaukee side. Giannis Antetokounmpo. Let's remove him from the equation because we know how many baskets he gets at the rim, how easy it is for him. Well, Chris Middleton is healthy and playing really, really effectively. In fact, we've seen that assist rate north of 35% in the absence of Dame and Giannis Antetokounmpo, and we've seen that usage continually in that 27, 28% range with both of them off the floor as well. That has room to grow. That has an opportunity for one of the more effective shooters on this Milwaukee team to get more looks, even in the absence of Antetokounmpo. So no matter how you slice this up, I disagree with this total. And if all 4 end up in, I think that's the stone cold nuts for us at 223. So 216.5. I ran multiple simulations. I go player by player from dunks and threes. I then add it here with Stochastic with a lot of our simulation tools that we have. 216.5. Way too low of a number. Fire it up. My favorite play for Thursday, December 26th. And not a lot to mine out of this one, I think. Houston at New Orleans, and DeJounte Murray just been shooting the ball absolutely horrendously. As for Houston on the other side of this one, any injury news to really cover? No. Tari Eason is questionable. That could help for Jabari Smith. Talk through how that works out on Live Before Lock here a couple of days ago. Ended up making some people some money in the pick'em streets who ended up tailing that one. That felt good, but didn't end up playing him for myself, so not going to victory lap it all that much. Trey Murphy, questionable. Huge questionable tag that's sitting there here for New Orleans, and I kind of want to blindly back. Why is that so hard to say? Blindly back one DeJounte Murray here in this spot. He's been shooting the ball at a first percentile range here to start off. It's a very small sample size, but again, he will be out of the NBA if he continues to shoot it at this specific clip. It's been one of the worst shooting years you could ever imagine for a quote-unquote franchise player. 40.1% effective field goal percentage, 42.3% at the rim. These are not real numbers for a DeJounte Murray. He will improve. It has to get better. 26.8% from three is a joke. So everything I'm seeing on my sheet and in my model has me over 18.5, and yet I'm going to make this a lean because if DeJounte Murray's in, I'm assuming if Trey Murphy's in, DeJounte Murray won't shoot as much. -105 on Hard Rock. It's the only reason I'm thinking about betting this one. Man, this guy's lost me money this year. Speaking of losing money, Utah +3.5 taking on Portland. They're losing their young owner money every single day they go out and play basketball because they're not very good. But there's improvement around the corner, just around the river bend. Shout out Pocahontas. But we got Portland here, and they're starting to get much, much healthier. We've seen now DeAndre Ayton play quite a few games now in a row. Jeremy Grant, Tamani Kamara, Shaedon Sharpe, Anthony Simons. You get Delano Banton and Robert Williams questionable, and I would like to see Robert Williams in if you're trying to win basketball games and you're backing Portland. I don't think he's necessarily in. I think they're looking to move Robert Williams, and I think that's more of what this Q tag is. Hey, you're tweaked up. You're not feeling all that good. You're only going to play 18, 20 minutes anyway. Have a seat. Just kick it. We'll pay you your game check. Just don't get hurt so we can trade you. Utah +3.5. That's the direction that I'm going here in this one. My model has this closer to Utah being favored. And the only reason that I'm not going to lock this with a 3.5, 4-point discrepancy is because it's the Utah Jazz on the road. Let's be dead serious. Utah +3.5. That is my second favorite play on the day. And we reach our final game of the night. We got Detroit taking on Sacramento. We're going to be under 20 minutes here for this program. And that's lovely. And everybody in the Premium Discord loves the Detroit Pistons. And why? Well, we back them not only on the spread, but on the money line there for a half unit. Cash that at +192 at Caesars, as well as over 14.5 points for Malik Beasley. He goes over there in that middle of the fourth quarter. I was very happy. We won a lot of money. We are all very, very merry. But despite the fact that they were 6-point favorites against LA and now taking on Sacramento, who I actually don't value as much as I do LA, I'm throwing a little bit of caution to the wind here, purely because I think Sacramento is going to release every single guy out into the fold here for this game. They've had some injuries here and there, and Devin Carter, not that anybody cares. He's the only piece who's on the injury report for them. He's going to be out. But you have an opportunity for Isaiah Stewart, who's questionable, to end up in this rotation again. Ron Holland, who's questionable, to end up in this rotation again. I kind of don't want them. I want more minutes for Asar Thompson, who's the winning basketball player between all of those guys. And I think if I got both of them out, and I knew that in some way, shape, or form, I could predict Sacramento's rotation, which has been out of control here with Trey Lyles back, with Kevin Huerter off the bench. Sometimes they like Keon Ellis. Sometimes they don't. If I could predict that a little bit better, I think I'd be more interested in betting this game. So I'll just call it a lean like. You know Detroit. Detroit is going to be one of those dogs that we back going towards the end of the season. Shit, they were one game away against Milwaukee from being in the semifinals of the NBA Cup. They lost on point differential towards the end of that thing. They're a much better basketball team that I think people are evaluating them for, especially with Jaden Ivey back on the floor on a game in, game out basis. Detroit +5. I'm going to call it a lean like. So I know we got a like in the corner there, but we're going to go lean. I haven't bet it yet, but a like. If you're looking for one more play here, I've got 4 on my card right now. I'd be okay making this a fit. And that does it for another edition of NBA Lindy's Leans, Likes, and Locks. Hit that like button down below. Also, go to the comment section below. Let me know your favorite plays that exist on the board for this lovely slate we have before us. 50% off using promo code Lindy50. Would love to see you guys there in that premium Discord. tomorrow. That would be awesome. Or today, depending on when you're listening to this. Producer Jacob, producer Jordan Klein, everybody here behind the scenes. Again, Jordan Klein, I think you'll be on hand with me tomorrow. So looking forward to that as well. We'll continue to get those lovely books listed in the corner for you. But until then, friends, I'm Eric Lindquist. Best of luck in the NBA streets on Thursday.